He was left in the car, alone, locked up in the heat. His body couldn't stand it. A 5-year-old boy has passed away.
I dolazi do polaganog zatajivanja organa.
It is a tragedy that has turned City Knin and the whole Croatian black. Accidents like this are not uncommon. They happen all the time all over the world.
I thought I was a horrible mother, and I felt like I didn't deserve any more children.
What is it inside of us that can lead us to forget our own child?
It's because we're doing something out of habit, and these brain memory systems compete against each other. They're almost like children competing for our attention.
That day, 15 years ago, Lynn Balfour from the U.S. state of Virginia was supposed to take the child to the kindergarten before going to work. She prepared him for that. She put him in the child seat and set off.
On the particular day that my son died, I had been really tired all week because he had had a cold, a bad cold, head cold, and he hadn't slept very well, so I hadn't slept very well. My son was 9 months old, and normally my husband took him to the daycare, but our provider had recently moved her daycare, and when she moved it, then I was responsible for dropping him off, and that change only happened about a week and a half before his death.
She stopped several times on the way to the kindergarten, she says. She also received calls several times.
I got a phone call from a family member. I got another phone call on the way to work that morning about an emergency with people that I was responsible for at work. Just switched focus to something else that I needed to take care of when I arrived at work.
She was convinced she had taken the child to kindergarten and gone to work.
She just assumed when he didn't show up that he was at home with me because she knew he had been, had a bad cold. She tried to call later in the morning, but she had a new cell phone, but didn't have our numbers saved in it. So she only tried to call my cell phone, not my work cell phone or my work number or my husband's number.
She says that at work she put aside her private number. When they got to her, it was too late. Her son Bryce died in the car from heat stroke. A child left in a car at a high temperature can die very quickly.
Već nakon 15 do 20 minuta mogu nastati nekakve štete po zdravlje ukoliko je temperatura prostora povišena iznad 40 stupnjeva.
This is because, says Dr. Godin, a child's body heats up faster.
Tijelo djeteta se 3 do 5 puta brže zagrijava nego tijelo odrasle osobe. Upravo zbog smanjenog mogućnosti znojenja, izbacivanja temperature van. Na temperaturi iznad 40 stupnjeva slijedi period kada ono gubi svijest, kada se smanjuje otkucaj srca, kada taj njezin volumen krvi je sve manji i manji i tada dolazi do polaganog gašenja, polaganog i nažalost bolnog i ružnog umiranja.
The fact that the child died quickly and in agony leaves no one indifferent. After the media published a story about a tragedy in Croatian city Knin, people on social media started insulting the father who left the child. Many condemned him.
Ni nakon 1000 ovakvih slučajeva ne mogu shvatiti kako netko može zaboraviti dijete u autu. Dijete je prioritet broj 1. Svakome se može dogoditi da zaboravi mobitel, novčanik, ključeve, pa se vratimo po njih, ali dijete zaboraviti to u toj mjeri da 8 sati niti ne pomisliš na njega. To nije čače ni vidjelo koji čača more dite zaboraviti u autu, vjerojatno je nigdje loka.
We have come to an identical case that happened many years ago in Cyprus. The father took his 5-year-old son to kindergarten. Along the way, someone called him from work that he had to come urgently. He left and forgot to leave the child in kindergarten. He left him in the parked car. When the mother was informed that the child had not come to kindergarten, he had already passed away.
Parents just don't believe it could ever happen to them. I was one of those parents.
About 10 years ago, I forgot my grandchild in the car. Brand new baby, only a few months old. And she was in the back seat. And it was the first time I was driving with my wife. When I got there, I exited my car. And as I stepped out, my wife said to me, "Have you forgotten something?" And I had no idea what she was talking about. And she said, "The baby's in the car." And I was struck right at that moment to realize if I had been alone, I would be another one of these statistics.
David Diamond is a neuroscientist from the United States who has been investigating human memory for decades. He also researched why parents leave their children in the car. He came to the conclusion that those parents and caregivers who have not abused their children before, neglected them, used drugs, or had some organic brain dysfunction can leave their children unknowingly and unintentionally.
I can guarantee you that the father did not take the child every single day straight from home to daycare and then go on to work. That there was something different about that day.
There is actually a war in our brain between the perspective memory and the habit. Perspective memory is responsible for remembering what we have to do in the near future, and habit is a regular human behavior. What does that war look like?
When you plan to stop along the way when you're going home, you want to stop at the grocery store. Whether it's for groceries or something really important like medication, at the start of your drive, you have this plan. You're saying, I want to interrupt my drive, I want to go to the store, and then I'll continue on home. And you use the part of your brain that has to do with conscious fact-based memory. You have a completely separate brain memory system that has taken you from work to home maybe 1,000 times. And that habit system becomes activated. When it is activated, it can actually suppress your conscious memory system.
And simply habit prevails over plan.
Spend an entire day at work, you can look at your child's picture, you can talk about your child, and often these people will say, I have to leave now to go pick up my child at daycare, because they've created a false memory that they actually accomplished their goal. And this is what's so horrific, because then they come out to their car and discover that their child has spent the day in a hot car and has died.
Lynn Balfour was charged with murder, and David Diamond's testimony about what happens in the brain during accidents like this helped her to be acquitted.
The jury here agreed with my attorneys and me that it was an accident. It was a tragic accident. I didn't serve any jail time, but the reality is that that's not really accurate, is it? I walk around on a daily basis and I'm in jail because I miss my son.
The practice in the US is not uniformed. For similar cases, different judgments are rendered. Many parents ended up in the prison for years.
You have a case in the US and Georgia, a man who forgot his child. And because he had been involved in an extramarital affair, the prosecutor made it appear as if he wanted to kill his child so that he could be free of his child and therefore marry another woman.
A soldier from Knin who left a child in the car was questioned and released. A criminal complaint was filed against him.
DORH u situacijama takve prirode mora istražiti kakve su okolnosti u kojima se desila ta tragična situacija. Ako neka osoba postupa namjerno, svjesno i pristaje na određeno ugrožavanje, onda tu represivni mehanizam djeluje, ali ako se dogodi ljudima stvar koju psihologija naziva sindrom zaboravljenog djeteta, a zakon kazneni naziva nehaj, i osobito se teško ta posljedica pogodi osobu kojoj se dešava cijela ta stvar, onda tu zakon ne propisuje kaznenu odgovornost, odnosno propisuje oslobađanje.
There was already a similar case in Croatia in the city Rovinj in July 2019 when a father left his 4-year-old daughter in the car. He didn't want to wake her up and he went briefly to his hair salon. The girl died of dehydration and heat stroke. Criminal charges were filed against the father. The county state's attorney's office issued a decision to terminate the investigation. Whatever punishment is prescribed by law, the actual punishment for a parent is the loss of a child. Awareness that by his mistake, he took his own child to his death.
You know, on Mother's Day, for example, I feel like I can't enjoy the day. I don't think I deserve that.
Specifično je to da se osjećaj krivnje javlja, odnosno da je uzrok krivnje sama ta osoba. Dakle, ja sam ga ostavio u autu i nažalost to dijete je umrlo u stravičnim mukama. I to je ono nešto što proždire roditelje i što ih uništava.
Lynn went to psychotherapy with her husband after the tragedy.
From the very first day, I told him that I was sorry and that hopefully he could forgive me. You know, by the grace of God for me, my husband did stick by my side.
A few days ago, the fire brigade of the city of Zagreb published a warning on Facebook. Do not leave children and animals in the car, and attached a table with the rate of increase of the internal temperature. At the time of writing this story, the outside temperature in Croatia is 30 degrees at 1 p.m. This means that the internal temperature in the car for 10 minutes is 34 degrees, and in 30 minutes even 56. How can we avoid leaving a child in such heat?
Majke često stavljaju teddy beara, dakle medvedića koji sjedi iza na sjedalici, stavljaju ga na prednje sjedalo.
In addition to various tricks such as messages on the front of the vehicle that reminds that the child is in the car, or toys on the seat next to the driver, there are various other reminders such as sensors in cars. All this can prevent tragedies.
In Israel, so many children died as a result of being left in cars there that they changed the federal laws that the daycare center must contact the parent to let them know the child didn't arrive. In Italy, they are now looking to have it mandated that new cars all have child detection systems.
A car journalist from Croatia says that there is no law in the European Union that would impose the introduction of such a rule for car manufacturers. But the good thing is that an independent European car safety body is soon introducing an important innovation.
Od 2022. uvodi pravilo da automobil bez ugrađenog upozorenja na zaboravljeno dijete neće moći dobiti maksimalnih 5 zvjezdica. Nije još definirano, ali vjerojatno će biti ili upozorenje ili će se morati staviti nekakav senzor, vjerojatno nekakav senzor težine na zadnji sjednici.
This car he bought a few months ago has such a sensor. At each stop, the driver is warned to look in the back seat. The Lynn Pulford story is part of a Washington Post article, Fatal Distraction, that won a Pulitzer Prize. After leaving her son Bryce in the car because of that fatal distraction, she gave birth to more children. She raised them, but this one who left this world because of her mistake, she will never be able to forget.
In 3 days, we're coming up on what would have been my son's 15th birthday. And it's very hard. It never gets easier. It's like a cold blanket that you get wrapped around that you can never get rid of.
Do you have maybe a message to a Croatian soldier?
Just take it one day at a time. You are a good father. And unfortunately, it's something that's going to stay with you. But please know that you're not alone. You are among a group of parents that have gone through the same thing that you're going through right now. And it will get better. And to always remember and honor your child by speaking up and standing up for what can happen to anyone.
Some may call it the abandoned child syndrome. Although experts do not recommend it, they can call it fatal distraction, loss of consciousness about a child, the battle of one memory over another. Someone can end up in prison or be acquitted, but neither the definitions nor the penalties prescribed by the state will actually make the deep pain go away. The awareness that he or she took his own child to his death by mistake is something that a parent can hardly forgive to himself. That is almost impossible to forget.